We're here.
We're here.
We're here.
We're spreading. We're trying to get as far away from each other as possible.
Another few weeks, we'll come back around the table, but we're working on it.
Well, what we have done in terms of the round table is we have to kind of adjust the camera every time. So
a little bit. Well, and also when other people use this space, there is that too.
Yeah.
And when you're in here alone versus I'm in here alone.
Welcome to Generational Change, guys. It's Thursday.
I'm Jen.
I'm Peter. This is a special guest that I think we've been ever since his appearance that frankly we never would have found out about. You know, a lot of times the thing that we have talked about constantly about the Democratic Party establishment, and you have often talked about a lot in politics, and if this was an even playing field, like when you ran against Debbie, Debbie would have destroyed herself if she was up against a candidate with $2.5 million.
Yes.
And this is a similar situation where we were aware that Professor Ware was Jill Stein's vice presidential pick, but we weren't really aware of him until the Democratic Party establishment.
How could we know that?
Then the Democratic Party establishment thought it would be cute when the professor went on with Jill Stein on The Breakfast Club. And I got all the respect in the world for Charlemagne because he does have a lot of people on that the Democratic Party would never touch. However, they didn't do it
in a shill-like capacity.
It decided to have
whatever
attack dog from the Democratic Party establishment, Angela Rye, go on there. And because it became such a viral moment, we found out about this professor and how he is really cut from the cloth.
Okay, first of all, I don't watch Breakfast Club, couldn't care less, don't know who that is. I didn't know who this Angela person was until after you said any of this. Thank you for pointing out
that I have no life and that
you handle our social media, so you should know those things. I have the luxury of not being on social media, which pleases me. However, as a voyeur on Instagram, on my little personal account, how I saw Professor Ware was on some workout video, something, something like that. That got my attention. And no, seriously though, this is actually really exciting. You guys, we've had Dr. Stein on, which was cool for me because that was the first time I ever had anybody on that I ever voted for. So that was kind of cool.
The first person you ever voted for? You mean the first
first person we've ever interviewed that I had ever voted for, because I voted for her in 2016. So we don't get to usually interview people that usually, like, who else? I voted for Bernie when that was like, it's not like, and he won't come on. So, it's exciting to talk to people that I get to vote for.
Do you know that he was a teacher at Northwestern?
I didn't know at Northwestern.
Well, now you know. So having that connection, I think, makes it even more fun.
I don't know. We can now co-rage about what's going on at Northwestern.
That would be a great place to start. He is the vice presidential nominee on the Green Party ticket with Jill Stein. Professor Butch Ware, welcome to Generational Change.
Hi.
Great to be with you guys. Really looking forward to the conversation. I just want to say that after you vote for us this November, then I can come on the show as many times as you like, and you can say, I voted for this person. I'm delighted to give you that that honor multiple times, and it'd be my honor to be back in the space. So I like what you guys are doing.
Oh, thank you so much. And you know what? It is true that I didn't know who you were prior to you being chosen by Jill Stein. I didn't know, and there have been times when it's people that I haven't heard of and I'm like the only person in the world, but I don't think that's the case, right? I mean, you weren't necessarily public prior to this other than like in academia.
Yeah.
Can you just like where I know that you're a professor. I know that I know what you teach and study, but what was your political connection?
If you run tape of me doing organizing and activists and community teaching and academic teaching and artistic work, if you run tape on me for the last, let's just say 20 years since I've been a full faculty member, first 4 years at Northwestern, then 10 years at Michigan, now 6 years at UCSB, and doing different, community organizing and activist work in all of those time periods, you will never find one incident of tape where you hear me talking about running for political office. So you're not alone in, not having me on political radar. To be truthful, if the Democrats and Republicans had seen me coming, they never would have let me get this far. So coming out of nowhere, sort of helps in this. I interviewed Dr. Jill, in my capacity as like a public intellectual and somebody that has been like I've done online, intensives about social justice and different kind of academic and activist work. So people in the kind of social media space, I think, were aware of me, but nobody ever put me with politics. I still don't consider myself a politician. I consider myself a public servant. And in that respect, I feel like what I've been doing for the last 20 plus years fits right in with other things. So yeah, seeking out elected office, certainly. Public servant, definitely. Politician, no, and therefore not a surprise that I wasn't on your radar.
I always said that too. I'm not a politician either, and it's I've been in it now twice. That I've run twice, where you're in that zone, and it's so nice to get out of the zone. I have to tell you, I'm sorry, I don't mean to like taunt you right now while you're in the zone, but
I mean, I'm doing okay. Like I'm to be perfectly honest, this is actually easier than many of the things that I've had to do in my life and career.
Because, and one thing that I did notice when I did look into you, which by the way, and as someone who is a supporter of Dr. West, and we've had Dr. West on the show, and that has always sort of been my candidate. And I always said, if he's not on our ballot, I'm going to vote for Jill Stein. Obviously, I mean, that's what I have to do. And then she picked you. And then that is sort of, to me, I feel like in a lot of ways, you speak to me in the same way that Dr. West does with the Black radical tradition. And I just wanted to tell you something that I thought you might appreciate. I had a donor this time, actually an author who was very supportive of my campaign. Mm-hmm. And he read some stuff that I had written. And he said to me that I was something like Huey P. Newton. And I almost cried. I'm like, That's like the best compliment ever, except for I don't want to get unalived. But I think of
knock on wood for that one.
Right, but I think of people like you in that vein, and it is scary to me. It is scary, like not at my level, but where you are. Yeah, I do think that that is scary to me.
Yeah, I mean, since we mentioned Huey P, just for the record, I'm a firm believer in the Black Second Amendment self-defense tradition. So, like Fannie Lou Hamer, said, any white boy want to burn a cross on my lawn, they ain't never gonna write their mama again. So I'll just say that, and we can, if we want to take it there, we can have this discussion, right? Because the current regime, the Biden-Harris regime, has denied our campaign Secret Service, and because they would much rather somebody take care of this problem for them. Dr. Jill Stein, as an anti-Zionist Jewish white woman, has obviously been the target of threats from Zionists, right? Who are amongst the most anti-Semitic of all possible people. They've been unaliving anti-Zionist Jews since the 19-teens and 1920s, before there was a state of Israel. So that's number one. And then when you layer that on top of what has happened, to vocal Black voices such as myself in the political history of this country, so you better bet we stay strapped, and have security at all times, and to be perfectly honest, with respect to that Secret Service, listen, those guys didn't exactly, cover themselves in glory on January 6th, now did they?
They do when it's convenient. But then I almost see it full circle with the Second Amendment, because in reality, it's because of the Black radical historic movement that we have all these gun regulations, because they were fine with everybody having guns until the Black Panthers showed up strapped.
As soon as them Panthers started, following cops around Oakland with their pieces showing open carry, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute. And it's really actually a deep point, just as a historian, to sit with that for a moment. Everybody always, focuses on that right to bear arms, but they never finish the bar, right? And if you finish the bar, it's as part of a well-organized militia, correct? So
actually, that's first. Those are the first four words.
Thank you. So
the first four words.
Yeah. So the bar, I switched the verse. But that's the point, right? Is what's the well-organized militia? Well, the well-organized militia is, in point of fact, slave patrols. And that's the reason why there's a kind of cognitive dissonance about armed Black people at all, because the whole reason why the Second Amendment is there is about suppression of the oppressed African population. And that's the part that's often left out of the narrative.
This is also where people like you and I tend to separate from a lot of the leftists with the gun issue.
Sure.
And this is something that I always said to him, running even in the Democratic Party, we got to just stay away from the gun issue, because while I don't have them, I don't personally have a firearm. I am fine with people that are Second Amendment enthusiasts. It doesn't bother me. And that really pisses off the white liberals, especially here, because especially Parkland. Like, Kamala was here within the past, like, however many months. And of course, the whole motorcade shuts down our entire 595. Yep. And what does she do? She flies into our airport and does her first event at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas with the Parkland, the survivors.
Yeah, it's always
that's the priority when she comes into town here.
Of course.
The people who scream the loudest about taking guns away are also the first people who call the cops. Don't forget that.
Well, and I mean, for the record, right, this is actually not an issue that, to be perfectly honest, this is not an issue that implicates the Green Party one way or another. In fact, like Black Liberation Party has been a part of this. In Massachusetts, it's actually the Green Rainbow Party, and that's the original Rainbow Coalition with the Black Panthers in it, and Brown Panthers and others, right? So all of this is just to say that liberal conservative culture war around guns concerns us in exactly no fashion, and in a number of ways, but most sort of foundationally, right? There are no liberals in the Green Party, number one, right?
Probably not.
There are no liberals in the Green Party, and there's no conservatives in the Green Party either. So to be perfectly honest, like, our y'all out there, not you guys, but y'all out there, y'all culture war don't have anything to do with what the Green Party is about. And I'm often, pointing out, especially to Muslim audiences, that frankly, like a lot of the issues that you might take up with culture war, that you're used to associating with the quote unquote left, doesn't have anything to do with the left. Y'all are talking about liberals. And liberals, Malcolm, and I read the autobiography of Malcolm X at 15 in one night. That's when I became Muslim. That's when I got, kind of initiated into the Black radical tradition. So Malcolm has been my teacher at distance, for my whole life. And Malcolm told us about liberals. Malcolm said that the liberal is a fox. It bares its teeth and you think that it's smiling at you, but it's there to consume you. He talks about the liberal has mastered the art of posing as the Negro's friend and benefactor. So he told me never to trust the liberal. And he also told me never to trust the conservative. He said the conservative is the wolf. It bares its teeth and you know they're on the menu. So for me, these two parties, crystallized now in really kind of one corporate party with, like, do you want liberal flavored genocide or conservative flavored fascism, right? They're just the same. They're the same party. These have never been people that I put trust or hope into and never identified. So whether it's on Second Amendment, questions, like, we're just not, in that conversation in the same way that the Democrats are.
No, well, they need it for fundraising. I mean, and they need that, like, they need women's reproductive choice for fundraising purposes. And those are
issues. Yep, exactly.
And those are the issues that get, like, hype, that get the suburbanites all hyped up and motivate them. And the truth is, and I can say this specifically for down here, those are the people that vote. Those are the voters. And so that's the kind of issues that they use. And that's how Democrats fundraise.
Professor, one of the difficult things that the Green Party has had, particularly when it comes to being blamed, for costing Al Gore the election back in 2000.
I voted for Nader.
Yeah, we all know it was BS. But particularly in 2016, always bearing the brunt of the responsibility. And we're going to play the clip from Kshama Sawant in just a minute. But I think it's important, especially with the voice that you're bringing to the table, that in many ways can redefine the Green Party, because for a long time it's just been viewed as this tree-hugging party that doesn't know how to coalition build.
I've always said
when I was young, I'll be honest, because my best friend was in the Green Party. His mom was the first ever elected Green Party official, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But for me, like, as somebody who was like radically apolitical as a youth, for me, the Green Party was it was green for the environment, and it was green for the sticky icky, right? They were the legalize it team, and that was it. That they were green in those two senses. So yeah, go ahead. Not to interrupt.
No, I just have always said for years that their issue is branding and name.
Yeah, I have to say this right now. I have to cut you off.
I know.
Just so you
Tell
know,
how we work.
I'm in a group chat with my family right now for
Oh,
whatever
no.
reason.
He shouldn't get in
I'm
it.
putting him on blast.
Oh, no, don't do this. Don't engage with them.
So my brother refers to you as the Putin acolyte. So this is, if you want to know.
Hey, tell him. Hey, listen. Tell your brother. Yeah. Jen, you've seen the workout videos, right? Tell your brother. Tell your brother, come say it to my face.
Yeah, for real.
Well, he wouldn't even get up from his computer. I've met his brother.
My brother is my brother is a psychoanalyst who lives in Newton, Massachusetts. So if you
he's so they're bougie.
I love all these clickety clack keyboard warriors who, if they see me walking down the street, would go to the other side of the street, you know. And then got just have the nerve to talk all out there, backside. But you can really tell, and this is the thing about being on the Breakfast Club, you can tell the people that are just completely indoctrinated in the MSNBC, CNN bubble, that they're just so insulated, and he admits that he's privileged.
He's into like Rachel Maddow.
Yeah, like it's amazing. They always want to say that.
Real quick, I haven't had the chance to say this yet in a media appearance. Anyone that knows me, has there ever been a human being more sanctimonious than Rachel Maddow?
Oh,
considering how she started with Air America, and then once the money started rolling in, she's like, "I'll be whatever corporate whore you want me to be."
I heard we're going to talk about Mehdi Hasan a little bit later on.
Oh God, and I don't
even want to. Maybe we can draw a parallel.
Right, I don't want to give Mehdi the time of day. Like, let's talk.
No. He does not get in this early in the show. We can agree on that.
We don't need to. Do not do that yet. Don't bring Mehdi into this.
I'm just saying, if we're talking about sanctimonious sellouts, he's going to make his way into the conversation sooner than later. But we can put that off for the moment.
There's so many of them, and it's amazing how many people have really shown who they are in this past year. I have found it extremely clarifying, and I've always said this, like, as somebody who is very like free speech absolutist. Like, I don't have a problem with hate speech. I don't have a problem with it at all. If you want to walk down the street saying, I hate Jews this, Jews that, have at it, man. Now if somebody comes and knocks you out, that's also going to be your problem. But I'm just like, I don't care what you say.
Actions have consequences. Yep.
Well, absolutely. I like to know who my bigots are. So the fact that people think suppressing hate speech somehow makes the hate not be there, that's just delusional. I think we're better off knowing who those people are. It doesn't, you know what I mean? So I don't have a problem with that.
Well, this is this is actually a good transition into the clip of Kshama, because the one thing that we had, just alluded to is this idea of sort of redefining the Green Party and what it actually means. Is it going to embrace, as you have alluded to, this radical Black tradition of actual infrastructural change? Because for a very long time, the party has had the reputation of just being a very niche tree-hugging party that can't really coalition build. With your voice now at play, actually taking center stage in many ways, I think that there is an opportunity for the party to redefine itself. And I think Kshama Sawant, who is somewhat of a hero.
We haven't been able to get her on the
show. I'm a big fan of Workers Strike Back. When the youth drops, I watch it every time. So yeah.
Yeah. So here's what Kshama had to say the other day regarding the Green Party and what their intentions are in this election in November.
Election has already started. Absentee ballots have been sent. We need to catch up rapidly. We need everyone here to get active. We need to be clear about what our goals are. We are not in a position to win the White House, but we do have a real opportunity to win something historic. We could deny Kamala Harris the state of Michigan. And the polls show that most likely Harris cannot win the election without Michigan.
Guess they should have thought of that before they went on board with the genocide.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I guess, whoops, you should have maybe considered that. But
one of Jen's biggest supporters when she ran for Congress against one of the biggest Zionists in all of politics, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. You know, there was this family that lives in the area. The husband has lost like 15 relatives. They've been murdered. I mean, you want to talk about mass murder on the highest scale, and his disposition, even to this day, Mr. Alan, he is beyond gracious. And the one thing I took away from the experience of growing up in a household where I went to both synagogue and I've been to church, and my experience going to a mosque, talk about really practicing what you preach. That's what you get in a mosque.
I like it too.
You talk about walking in a door where it's all about Allah and Muhammad, and that is it. And everyone, and I mean everyone of every shape, size, color, and creed,
they literally get in line.
Is equal.
I've seen it. I've seen it, people. They literally get in line. You know what? First of all, I love, it's just, first of all, the whole taking off the shoes thing. I find it, and I'm an atheist. That is not my bag, but I find watching the regular prayers extremely cathartic. And I find the chanting very, very like meditative. So I actually I've been to a lot of different mosques this past year. I've been to
I would imagine,
yeah. So, but I find it very cathartic. But it is totally different than any Judeo-Christian sort of assemblage. And it is such a good way. And I've tried to explain this, like when people go to synagogue, everybody walks in and they sit with their little friends and they chit chat and they do their little thing and whatever. And it's like groups. And I'm like, you don't understand. When they go into prayer, it's you walk in, you fill up the space, your shoulder, foot to foot. Like it's so like everybody is so at the same level. It's nice. It's really nice.
It was something, that was obviously extremely attractive to me when I entered into Islam at age 15, and then, studying the tradition, and especially the way that like the spiritual and historical and social resources of Islam actually like led to African Muslim scholars like leading uprisings against the slave trade, abolishing the institution of slavery, like fighting against white supremacy. My first academic book is really largely the story of how African Muslim scholars like faced up to nascent capitalism, imperialism, and slavery. And that was one of the biggest things for me of getting called into this campaign. And I want to come back to what Kshama said in just a minute. But getting called into this campaign, like if you read my first book, you'll hear me like really documenting like what African Muslim scholars who were minding their own business, teaching and organizing, and then suddenly like the fight against white supremacy in their time came to their doorstep and they got tagged into a fight. Like it's a little spot on for my own story. Like I essentially have been written in to a series of historical narratives that I used to, write about in an academic sense. And now I find myself mixed up in the middle of it. I'll use this as a transition just to say one thing. Like those, African Muslim scholars, I got into this fight to win it. And I take great exception to Kshama speaking as a surrogate for the Green Party and saying we are not in position to win. I told her that at a campaign event in Seattle that I did not organize. It is a mistake that I do not wish to see repeated. And the reason is that I was raised in the Black Muslim tradition, yes, of Malcolm X. That was my pathway to Islam, but it's also the Black Muslim tradition of Muhammad Ali. And when Muhammad Ali got into the ring with Sonny Liston, he wasn't talking about we're not in position to win. And I'm going to tell you right now that while I understand that the odds are long, there's a certain group of leftists who have been battered by their experience with the Democrats and now have internalized some colonial mentalities. And they are essentially lowering their aspirations. That would be my biggest sort of structural critique of the so-called left at this current point, is that they're happy just to be on the field. And I ain't built like that. So at all. Like everything that I've ever done in my career has been top half of 1%. And that is, you know, me coming, you know, my dad was a locksmith with a 6th grade education. I got my PhD from Penn, Northwestern University, Michigan are my first jobs. I wrote a grant proposal my first year as an assistant professor that got $1.1 million in funding. And I was directing research teams on 4 continents. I am not in this to be a spoiler. I'm not in it for 5%. We're in it to win. And if we got to 15% in the polling in the next couple of weeks in 4 separate polls, they would be required to give us a debate. And if they ever let me on a stage with JD Vance and Tim Walz, bring 2 body bags to the party. And if they ever let Dr. Jill, if they ever let Dr. Jill on stage with, you know, with a war criminal to her left and a domestic terrorist to her right, the American people are going to see the difference between leaders with intelligence and integrity and criminals. And all I'll say is that yes, it's a long shot, but that is still a shot. We don't know what Kamala Harris is going to do in butchering this, you know, next phase of this escalation. Joe Biden could drop dead tomorrow, and all of that blood would be on Kamala's hands. Donald Trump could get locked up the day after tomorrow. And my philosophy, my whole life, because I know that people that come from where I come from don't get 10 shots. So I have to be prepared for every single one of them, which means if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. So that attitude that Kshama is displaying is not a realistic attitude. It's a defeatist attitude, and I reject it utterly. I am preparing for that knockout blow. And if I don't land that knockout blow, if we don't land that knockout blow, then we're looking for 15%. Turn the state of Michigan, turn the state of Pennsylvania. Our electors, our delegates then become kingmakers. We can have a negotiation between 2 parties, neither of which has reached the electoral college votes that they need. And then following that, if we don't reach that threshold, then we can talk about 5% and the way that guarantees literally tens of millions of dollars in funding for the next electoral cycle. And if you haven't already noticed, like I am already running for the Green Party nomination in 2028. And as I've said, if we don't win the White House in this cycle, I'm running for governor of the state of California in 2026. Because once I'm tagged into the fight, I ain't going out till the other guy goes down. That means we are in this fight for the long term, and we're here to build the Green Party. And to your point, right, to put a different kind of face, to put a different kind of coalition together that the Green Party has always, you know, sort of had connections with, especially in the indigenous community and other places, but to really build that out into a robust political organization that is capable of serving as the third party alternative that the whole American population knows that we all need.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm somewhere between the idea of that and like when you gave that sort of, you know, analogy of being on a field and how people on left are just sort of happy to be invited to the game. And, you know, it's like, you're there to win. And I'm sort of also leaning in the camp of, I want to set their stadium on fire.
Yep.
So I kind of feel like the whole, even working within the electoral system, I don't know that there's ever going to be a real solution from that and there's a reason, you know, they're not going to ever allow you or Dr. Stein to be on a debate stage.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that what did Biggie say? Kicked in the door, waving the 4-4. They never should have let me get this close, because I don't care whether they let me on that stage. I'm kicking I got my foot in the door now, so I'm kicking it in.
Yeah.
The reality is that we are already polling above that 5% in a bunch of different places. 5% does not just get us ballot access across the country. It does not just get us tens of millions of dollars from the federal government to prosecute the next election. It also guarantees a debate, which means that if I'm running, you know, at the top of the ticket, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise in 2028, then it means that they and whoever they send up there are going to have to contend with this new Green Party. And they're going to have to contend with me specifically on that stage. And that's when people will learn what the cost of privilege actually is to America, because privilege preserves mediocrity. It is a race to the bottom. These are soft, weak, unintelligent, unaccomplished candidates. What has Kamala ever won or done? right?
Oh, I don't understand how she was a litigator. I've watched her not be able to have a conversation without a teleprompter. I've said many times, she was a litigator. How was she a litigator? How did that happen? I don't understand.
Watch Judge Joe Brown dismantle her ineptitude, as a litigator.
Yeah.
I don't like how hard he capes for Trump in that video, but people that had experience with her in her previous professional career can tell you what kind of mediocre intellect and what kind of mediocre morality this individual has. So steel sharpens steel. And, like my mother was 15 years old, pregnant with me, told by her high school guidance counselor to get an abortion. This world was trying to take me out before I got here. I never lived at the same street address for a calendar year until I was 8 years old. We were eviction to eviction, temporary residence to temporary residence, shelter to shelter. So the odds of us landing a knockout punch in this election are significantly less than the odds of me even being a tenured professor, much less being a VP candidate. I am not scared of this moment, and I ain't scared of them soft Republicans and them soft Democrats either. So
they are so ridiculous, right? Like they're just ridiculous.
Objectively mediocre people, right? Objectively mediocre.
Yeah. Well, and Trump, as someone, and I go back, look, this is something like you and I are Gen X. And so that's another thing about people talking to me online. I'm not on social media. If you have something to say to me, say it to my face.
Say word.
But you know what I mean? It's like none of these people would say it to my face. So, but I didn't like him in the 80s. He was a douche then. So, he hasn't grown on me since. So people like that got where they are based on nepotism and just like luck of the draw and a fact that people are sheep. So those kinds of people are able to do what they're able to do, but there's no substance there. That he's completely void.
And there's another principal factor, which is something that I've also been working, behind the scenes to redress, which is that we have to take stock of the fact that the American people have been subject for at least 35 years to an ongoing psyop in our media coverage. The corporate takeover of media has essentially propped up these thoroughly unaccomplished, unintelligent, and mediocre candidates. Donald Trump got so much free media coverage, from both sides of the establishment, masking the fact that and let's just be blunt about this. Donald Trump could not pass any class that I have ever taught at any university.
I don't know that I could. I don't know that I could.
You definitely could because you're at least capable of thinking and speaking in full sentences, right? Donald Trump as his family name.
Excuse me, my name is Trump. You can say it right. I'm totally Americanized. You're not calling me Trump no more.
Yeah, Donnie Trump, Donnie Trump is the perfect example, right, of what white privilege does and what it costs America. Man, born on third base, thought he hit a triple. Okay,
that's a great analogy.
But let me ask you this: how is Kamala so different?
No,
they're playing the race card.
She isn't.
They're playing that, but.
It's even worse. Let me finish with Trump first, because I realize this now. Yes, we're all familiar with the expression "born on third base, thought he hit a triple." Trump is even worse. Born on third base, thought he hit a triple, tells you he hit a home run, walks home, and you let him do it. So he's not. He's going to gaslight you to tell you that no, that ball cleared the fence by 10 feet, and for some reason these people, smile and nod. Now, with respect to Kamala, let's be blunt about this. Kamala, for her entire career, has been to the right of Ronald Reagan. Her whole career. Her Republican bona fides are stronger than Trump's, who was a Democrat for significant portions of his life. And let me just be blunt about this. The white supremacist credentials of Donald Trump are in no way superior to those of Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is the black face of white supremacy. She's what Frantz Fanon described in his, seminal work, Black Skins, White Masks. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. People were tripping about these coconut memes that Kamala was dropping when she first got on the ticket, and they decided that they were going to black girl magic a genocide, right? Well, those of us that are like internationally read in on racial questions know that for the South Asian community, a coconut is the equivalent of an Oreo in the Black community. It means you're brown on the outside, white on the inside. And that is a perfect description of Killer Kamala. That is, that is that's, I won't say if you crack her coconut, or if you crack that coconut, it's all white thoughts on the inside. It's all white supremacy. She is somebody that's mostly known as an agent of the carceral state. And I'll just say this, is that watching especially Black women abolitionists like Angela Davis sully their legacies for eternity by endorsing this blackface minstrel show, this Drake of the political arena, right? She is cosplay Blackness manifest.
Did you just say Angela Davis?
Angela Davis endorsed.
That's worse than Bruce Springsteen.
Well,
I'm
look,
just disgusted. I'm just disgusted.
Look,
I can't even with
Professor,
these
do
people.
you, as somebody who probably understands the Black community as well as anybody, is this really just a question of societal position? Is it just a question of money? I think a lot of people look around and, we have the obvious suspects, but there's a lot of people,
Hillary Clinton.
I'm not talking about her.
Okay.
I'm just saying in general, there is something to be said for the acceptance of just playing along with the Democratic Party establishment. But I'm also seeing a lot of pushback that we've never really seen before. And I also see the support for Trump, particularly from Black men, as more of a fuck you to the Democratic Party than it is a support for Trump. They're supporting him because everyone in their eyes is basically a hater of Trump. So they're like, okay, you want to be a player hater? Then I'm just going to go right with the game. That's how it's going to be. Yeah. But I do think we're living in a different time now. And I do think there is an evolutionary period that's taking place, even though even some people in the chat are like, well, you're not being realistic. It's like, well, you know what? There's a lot of unrealistic expectations before it becomes realistic. And
it's such a brainwashed defeatist. It just shows that they've been sucking on the teat of mainstream media and can't get the propaganda off of loop inside their cerebellum. The reality is the only reason why people say that is because they've been told to say that. My favorite MC, Wise Intelligent from Poor Righteous Teachers, he visited my hip hop history class one time and he said, narrative scripts human behavior the way that code scripts computers. And that's the reason why they're fighting over this narrative. This media narrative keeps people plugged in and suckling at this teat that keeps feeding them poison. Because the reality is that 70% of the American population is opposed to genocide. 70% of independents in the most recent polling have said that this country needs a viable third-party alternative because the two parties, neither of them is doing their job. And you might expect that from independents, but did you expect that 50% of both Republicans and Democrats say that we need a third party because neither team blue nor team red is doing their job? So this defeatist idea that you can't win, what did Malcolm say? Malcolm said, never let your enemy tell you how many of you there are. If you believe that these people are telling you the truth about your electoral prospects, then you are just, brainwashed. You're the one in a delusional state.
Yeah, well, if we're also, I'm sure you saw the clip of the reporter questioning Miller and basically going into a diatribe about everybody's sick of this shit. You keep lying about what's going on. You're complicit in this genocide. And I've been saying for months, I don't know why any journalist goes to those press conferences because you're just being lied to.
You're just being lied to directly to your face.
What is the point? You're sitting there like, and I know Ryan Grimm. He's a nice guy. He knows he's being lied to. He's not an idiot. Of course he knows that. So the facade that they just sort of keep this going like they're actually being given information is a big part of the problem. I mean, I don't know why we give that any credence whatsoever. Yeah,
I mean, it's a commentary on the sorry state of the media. The way Dr. Jill likes to put it, and I like this, phrasing, is that they're supposed to be the watchdog, but instead they're the lapdog.
Oh yeah.
Right. And actually that's a point that I wanted to flesh out earlier. I used to say for a long time, I mean, people that know me know I've had a lot to say about politics, even though I never had, aspirations about elected office. I've been saying since the early 90s that American democracy in its current form was doomed the day that Rush Limbaugh went on the air. And the reason is that what it showed to the media companies who had previously done news is that there was essentially an unlimited market for telling people what they want to hear and carrying water for particular political constituencies. And so even the veneer of like, objective coverage, or at least, disinterested coverage, vanished. And so then Fox News comes in the aftermath of Rush Limbaugh. Then MSNBC, has to create a model, and essentially they just become the state media. When it's Democrats in power, the Republicans are the state. Republicans have Fox as the state media. When they're in power, CNN runs cover and carries water for the 1% as a whole, right? And so what we now have is this environment wherein there is actually like no air. And that's what they're afraid of with the repression of speech on campuses. That's what the TikTok ban is about, is that these corporations that now are in every single congressional lawmaker, every single elected official in the Democrat and Republican parties are all in the pockets of these corporations. That's why they're trying to silence our campaign. That's why they're trying to keep us off of those stages, because they know the American people are actually not fools. The American people have been fooled, so that they keep running these little sorry narratives about, oh, you're a Russian asset. You know what they call Russian assets, the Democratic Party, is that if people advocate for reparations, that is considered a Russian media talking point, and you get labeled. Yes, you get labeled as a Russian.
Really?
No
What's
joke.
the connection? Well, then because I've been talking about that for 5 years now. So am I a Russian asset?
Which is exactly the point, is that because the Kremlin used to use reparations arguments against the United States, that if you are vocal about reparations, that can literally like get you, classed as repeating Russian talking points. So this is the kind of sheer madness that we're talking about. They do everything they can to try to marginalize and dismiss us. Let us get a fair hearing from the American public, and we'll unplug all these sorry people from that media tap that they've been suckling on.
You know what it is? It's like the Batman movie with Jim Carrey, and where I don't know if you saw it, and he had all the people staring at those little things, and the little things went in their heads like these little lights, and they were all like zoned out. That's what I feel like we're living in.
Yep. And meanwhile, people in the chat, oh, you're just going to get Trump elected. Let me just say something about that really quickly. This is another one of those nonsensical, ludicrous.
Who in my chat is saying shit like that?
Who cares?
I want to know.
That doesn't matter. Let me just dismantle that really quickly. The Democrats have already lost the election. They cannot win the election. The first thing when I came on and took meetings with people that have done polling, I knew this as soon as I got on the campaign in August. Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, Dalia Mugahed, has been polling the Muslim community for 12 plus years. She showed me the numbers. Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, these numbers were available in January of this year. So in those three swing states that the Democrats need every single one of them to win the election, okay? Joe Biden got 65% of the vote in 2020. In January 2024, he was polling at 12%. Dead man walking. The Democrats can't win. So they're up now to 14% with Kamala. They're finished. They cannot win any of the swing states without the Muslim vote, which makes what they're doing all the more insidious, because what they are doing is that they are now preparing to scapegoat the Muslim population for when they inevitably lose this election and get Trump elected, which they have done through their refusal to come off of this AIPAC and war machine gravy train that is leading to a river and an avalanche of blood in Gaza. So last thing that I'll say about this, the most recent polling by Yaqeen Institute of the Muslim community, this came out just this week, says that 53% of the Muslim community is going third party in this election, 14% for Kamala, 4% for Trump. So we are not getting Trump elected. The genociders are getting Trump elected. And I don't know what kind of insanity has gripped them that thinks that Nazis get a second shot. You don't get to genocide people in full view of the public and then recover from that as a party. They're finished. They're going the way of the Whigs. It's over for them. They will never recover from the ass whipping that they take during this election. And what the American people actually have the choice. Do you want to invest in building power in an alternative movement that is not corrupt and genocidal and invested in the carceral state and sending pigs to campuses to crack kids' heads open because they're exercising their constitutionally guaranteed rights to free speech? People need to wake up and they need to grow up. Fascism is already here. Stop fear-mongering around Trump.
Yeah, it's always been, it's the Republicans like to kick down with immigrants and Muslims, and then the Democrats like to blame the Republicans. And it's like, that's the boogeyman. Oh, Trump's the boogeyman. The fact that you didn't have a primary, could that maybe have something to do with lack of democracy? I don't know. I'm just speculating. But, it's just when they say that he is somehow bringing in fascism, first of all, I don't think he even knows what fascism is. Trump doesn't have an ism. He's just a narcissist.
Professor, one of the things that I think is very important to talk about, because obviously time is limited, I want to make sure that you address this very big issue, because it's always liberals, and especially people that frankly are the weak, as you've often talked about, because the people that know that it's wrong to support genocide, but are still going to support those that are supporting the genocide because they just can't get off the plantation, as you have said. Could you please talk about the Democrats constantly? It's almost like a rite of passage if you're in the establishment and are going to be paid money to say these talking points like Angela Rye does.
They actually do get paid for that.
Democracy's on the line. We must vote against Trump.
It's an existential threat. This is the most important election of our lifetime.
And yet, I don't think people truly understand what, I mean, I could talk about Mark Elias, but you already know him very well. The things that the Democratic Party establishment in particular do to subvert the democratic process, the things that they do, particularly to the Green Party, to make it 10 times more difficult to be involved in the electoral process, raise money, build coalitions. Can you talk about what they have been doing? And now that they really see you as a threat, the things that they are continuing to do on an even grander scale to ensure that there is no breakthrough in the status
those Democratic quo. Democrats.
They've made, I mean, they're always prattling on and on about how the Republicans are doing voter suppression. What the Democrats do instead is competition suppression, okay? They do a fair amount of voter suppression, too, separate conversation. But what they've done consistently is sue over and over and over again to try to keep us off the ballot. Now, what kind of party that is interested in expanding electoral access does that? They are the most corrupt, disingenuous band of crooks and thieves. That at least the Republicans are honest in their brutality. The duplicitousness of the Democrats, I mean, there almost aren't any words to describe it. All they do is gaslight. They have one discourse that is for public consumption, and they have an absolutely Machiavellian and cruel calculus that they deploy. Remember that they are the reason why we have Trump in the first place.
Absolutely.
They're the reason why we have the extremist politics on the Republican side that we now have, because they have been systematically pouring money into the most extreme candidates on the Republican side, thinking that gave them a better shot, when all it has done is produced more fascism. They are the fundamental and principal authors of fascism. They made their bed of blood. Now let them lie in it.
Yeah. Now, here's the thing. Can they let them and the Zionist state? I want the Zionist state and the Democratic Party to be done, go. They could all just go. And it's like, I feel like on one hand, this is another sort of analogy. I was thinking the empire is going down. The empire is going down. And it's very obvious that that's happening. So to me, what it looks like is if you have someone like Trump for 4 years, that's sort of like a free fall. You put Kamala in there, you're just on those long escalators. you know, those long escalators that take you all the way down.
And I heard Nina Turner, you know, who, you know, and Nina Turner is one of the few Democrats that I have respect for. I mean, I can't help but have respect for Nina. And Nina, you know, when your party goes down in flames, girl, when your party runs down in flames, I'm just gonna throw this out there, you know. We're vetting running mates for 2028. You know, like if you want to go green, you know, like I think that would be a killer presidential, you know, ticket. So she made this comparison, right? That the Democrats, you know, the Republicans kill you fast, Democrats kill you slow. I'm not sure I buy it, and the reason is that the isolationist tendency in the Republican Party has them actually they have less velocity speeding headlong into World War III than the Democrats do. The Democrats are more hawkish when it comes to nuclear escalation with respect to NATO. They've actually done much worse. Everybody's like, oh, well, what's Trump going to do? It's going to be worse. How is it worse than 250,000 people? He's going to kill 10, he's going to kill 20, he's going to kill 30, he's going to kill 40, he's going to kill 50. Still not there, right? So this fear mongering that somehow the collapse into fascism is going to be more rapid with Trump. I just don't see it, because
I don't mean the collapse into fascism. Let me be clear. I'm talking about he facilitates the revolution.
I see.
The revolution.
He's an accelerant. Yeah, he's an accelerant.
Absolutely. When you have Kamala in there, you have people literally going back to sleep. That's it. They're not paying attention anymore. And she'll get away with doing the same things that he won't get away with doing under public scrutiny. Now, he gets away with everything judicially, but like he is under a microscope. So notice how people don't complain about kids in cages under Democrats.
Yeah, they don't complain about Obama blowing Yemeni kids up with drones.
That's what I mean.
So here's the and I agree with you. Here is the issue, that what is actually at stake is that liberals feel threatened by Trump. And that they're perfectly willing to let, you know, people of color be massacred. They're perfectly willing to let the carceral state extend its grips. I mean, let's just talk about this for 1 second. There have been more Americans killed by police in every single year since Biden became president. And this is coming after the Floyd uprisings. And this is also a really, really important
point. Why.
Exactly. But why? Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, you know, another, you know, student of Malcolm, this time in direct fashion. He said that people usually mobilize around issues, but revolutionaries organize against systems. People mobilized around the issue of police brutality, but didn't organize against the system. And therefore, we ended up with a more brutal crackdown of the carceral state, extension of cop cities, more people murdered by police than in every single year. So it's mounting. And then on top of that, they're sending troops in riot gear to campuses to crack kids' heads open when they exercise their free speech. So
it's freaking me out.
The liberals go to sleep and let the fascists do whatever the hell they want, as long as they're fascists wearing blue shirts.
Right.
Because they have no skin in the game. They're not threatened. As soon as then it becomes Republicans, all of a sudden liberals now consider themselves as having something to lose. But let's just be clear about this. The actual donors, the driving forces behind both Team Blue and Team Red do not give a good goddamn which team wins. Because militarized fascism wins with either Team Blue or Team Red. And the reality is that they are all owned by AIPAC and the same 5 weapons manufacturers, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and a few others. And those 5 defense corporations get roughly 60% of the United States' defense budget. And so the souls of both parties, blue and red, their names are written on tiny little pieces of paper and buried deep in the pockets of these mass murdering corporations and of AIPAC. And those purple fascists, Team Blue and Team Red, just one team, the Kamala in them would rather lose this election than unplug from the money train of AIPAC and the war machine.
They're redoing 2016 and they're going to get the same result. And I've said it a million times. Hillary Clinton is in the Kamala suit, you know. So if that's, there's no way that we can handle that. Like, there's no way this country can handle 8 years of Clintonism or whatever that is. That is just not going to work.
But the big difference, and I think this is a good place to conclude the conversation, is that you are bringing a different type of attitude to electoral politics that hasn't been seen in a very long time.
It pleases me.
And in the most positive way possible, because as a student of history, you know, I've always said that Teddy Roosevelt is my favorite president, not for everything that he did, but because he was willing to be hated at a time where the trajectory towards the Great Depression would have happened so much faster if it wasn't for him breaking with tradition in the first decade of the 20th century.
He has a favorite president.
But his run as the Bull Moose Party, people forget that he ran in the Republican primary against Taft. He won that primary, and the delegate at the convention gave it to Taft. And people still want to know today why we don't actually live in a democratic republic. We live in an oligarchic fascist state now. And so if you want to continue in the chat and pretending that Trump is going to end the world if he gets in there, if you think for 1 second that Donald Trump is more dangerous than Bill Gates, then you've already lost. You're already gone. There is no point in having this conversation. And it only happens on the left. It doesn't happen on the right.
Because they have oligarch idolatry so much on the left. Like they love their oligarchs.
And when they're out there, and this is a great example, and we could conclude here, you know, you're talking about the corporate takeover of our economic and political system, which has obviously happened. I think Mark Cuban does have pretty good takes every once in a while, and I appreciate cost plus drugs.
He's the least offensive of the oligarchs.
However, today,
dubious distinction, but go ahead. Yeah, continue.
One of the richest benefactors in Kamala's corner, as you know, is Reid Hoffman, based out of Los Angeles, and he is determined to get what maybe the only reasonable appointment in the Biden administration, Lena Khan, out of the head of the FTC. And as a result, Mark Cuban came out today and said, I actually would like to see Lena Khan taken out as well.
That's so unfortunate.
That's it.
All I hear is another one bites dust.
Yeah.
Like, that's all I hear in my
head. If you are looking for the billionaire donor class that funds the Democrats and the Republicans to grow a soul, don't hold your breath.
No, it's never happening.
And if you are looking for the politicians in either of those parties to grow a spine, also do not hold your breath. These are gelatinous blobs of goo that have melted under, you know, the money machine. They have no backbone of any kind. They, like I said about Kunta Keith Ellison, like I said about AOC Pelosi, when massa say jump, they say how high. And they are going to toe the party line, and they love it. As Malcolm said, they'll send one of us to kill us just so that they can say it was one of us. Like, they love sending black faces to go raise their hand at the UN and continue a white supremacist genocide. Keep in mind, this is a white woman making this statement. Imagine making Gaza your whole issue. Well, I got news for you, and this is American, especially white woman privilege of the highest order. And we haven't even made a clip of the woman wrapping herself in the Israeli flag at one of the Palestinian marches. Here's the thing. If your family has been mass murdered as a result of our relationship and aiding and abetting a genocide on Israel's behalf, and you still want that person to go out there and support the very party apparatus led now by Kamala Harris, who has stated very clearly that she is fully on board with what Israel is doing, What kind of narcissistic, genocidal lunatic would you have to be to think that you can slaughter an entire people and then expect them to also vote for you? It's a dissociative disorder, because the liberals have for so long been persuading themselves that they are the good guys and the bad guys are over there, that they just can't look at what's directly in front of their face. And I'm gonna say this to go out. I said something similar on Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman, and people maybe didn't understand that I was speaking directly to Amy herself, who has, played, and now this is also to the Mehdi Hassans of the world, and to all of the people who, despite themselves, are arguing vote blue no matter who. Let us be clear. Anyone that tries to shield Team Blue from suffering the electoral consequences of the evil that their own hands have wrought is complicit in that evil. You are washing the blood off of their hands, and you are putting the silencer at the end of their guns. You are morally compromised, and you need to wake up. History will record anyone that supported this genocide as a monster, the same way that anybody that supported the Nazi genocide is remembered in history as a monster. And when international observers go into Gaza, they're going to find an Auschwitz every 2 blocks. And this idea that you're a single issue voter, do you understand that if you let them genocide Palestinians in plain view, as Chris Hedges said, one day we will all be Palestinians. If genocide is not your red line, then you are teaching them that they can genocide you.
Yeah.
Amen.
Well, I always look, I never thought I'd be a single issue voter, but I never thought that genocide would be on my assortment of issues. Like, I could see why I wouldn't vote on just one particular issue a lot of the times. Not with this. And it's so off the wall that I feel like I'm in the bizarro world. Will you come back sometime? Because I have to go into a real geeky academic thing with you about like the crossover. Because I'm so interested with the intersection of Islam and the Black radical tradition, and I have a lot of questions.
That's my whole life. So
I
yeah,
know.
we can talk about that at any point in time. Be happy.
All right,
to.
well,
And as
I've
I've often pointed out, especially with people in the chat who may be bots, maybe trolls, maybe Sims for the Democratic Party, the fact is, and this is why we don't block people unless they're harassing.
Thanks for
people in the
helping our
chat.
numbers.
Just keep plugging away at the chat, because that just gets more and more people
Help
to see
my
this.
numbers.
And by the time this is made through clips, thousands upon thousands of people are going to see this, and that's a good thing, because the campaign needs all the help that they can get. I am not here to beat around the bush. If you cannot see that this is an inflection election that is going to change things in a very significant way, you're not going to feel it today, you're not going to feel it tomorrow, but it's coming. Because the things that they used to do is over now. And the fact that you are basically telling them to bring it.
I love that.
Everything you've got, because I ain't scared of shit, is the way that real change will happen.
I'd like to think I did that on a microcosmic level here.
You did.
I'd like to think so.
But
okay.
You, Professor, are making that you are the generational change that we are seeking. And so, guys, the link is in the description.
You know, he and I are the same generation.
Well, yeah. I mean, I know Gen X doesn't get enough credit, but you're getting.
We're the best.
You make sure you go over to Jill Stein.
But we are biased. But we are biased.
We not this shit seriously.
I mean, we are like, like incredibly good looking, have excellent personal hygiene, super intelligent, like all of the good attributes. We have them, none of the bad ones. I agree.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I'm a millennial, and I'm stuck having to
out of a paper bag.
Well, that's not entirely true, but neither here nor there. Go to JillStein2024.com. Give him a hand if you can. Professor, best of luck the rest of the way. We'll be talking to you after the election.
Bye, Butch.
All right, take care, guys.
Thank you, sir. Well, he was great, as you would have expected.
You know, like talking about that. So, like, first of all, I love talking to academic people because I can get all geeky and stuff. And I love that. You know, I really like talking to, I can get all geeked out by professorial I can. And we didn't even get into the whole, my anger at Northwestern right now. And look, especially as a graduate of journalism school.
And Juan, even if you're being genuine, and even if you're somebody who is not trolling, here's the bottom line. The country is going to change whether you like it or not, because it's coming.
Well, Dr. West is not on our ballot in Florida. And
even if that's not the point. The point is that people are looking around thinking, well, it'll definitely be worse with Trump. you don't know what's going to happen with Trump. All you know is what happened 4 years ago. A lot of things can change now.
You know what I would say?
We're always evolving.
I'm going to like have a big Lebowski moment when somebody says that things will be
Shut
worse.
the fuck up, Donnie.
No. Well, that's just like, your opinion, man.
No, well, the dude said that.
That's what I'm saying. It's like you say things would be worse under Trump. I don't know that. And again, not a fan.
And this is a perfect transition because, you're all out there worried about what the hell's going to happen if Trump gets in there again. Do you see what's going on in this country right now for almost 4 years? Well, we're going to show you, since one of the very best, yes, they're adjacent to the Democratic Party. They're the one organization that actually sticks to the facts.
Who are we talking
More
about?
Perfect
Okay.
Union
And they
just put out, and we have a couple of friends at More Perfect Union, particularly Sean Morrow and John Russell.
And they do good work.
Fantastic work. So Sean Morrow is covering the crisis of microplastics. Do you know microplastics are in just about everything that you eat? And drink?
Do you know that they're in people? Babies are being born with microplastics in them.
And do you know why?
I do.
Because big oil, which funds both, yes, they fund more Republicans than they do Democrats, but they fund the majority of both major political parties.
And here's something. We don't really talk about it enough because we talk about the fossil fuel industry in just that parameter, in just the fact that it's fossil fuels, it's drilling, it's fracking, it's cars, it's emissions. But we don't acknowledge that that's the exact same companies that it's plastics. So the fossil fuel companies are the plastics companies. It's the same thing. So they're poisoning on both ends. They're poisoning us on the extraction, and then they're poisoning us on the products that are going back in.
And I will just say, and Juan, that's your prerogative. We may not agree, but that's fine.
And we don't have to agree.
That is what free will is all about.
You
want to vote for Harris? That's fine.
I voted for Jill Stein.
So don't denigrate people who choose to go in the other direction.
And I would do so whether I was a swing state or I was in. I refuse to be gaslit and fear mongered anymore.
That's changing. That's a big part that's
won't
changing.
Be that anymore.
People are just not going.
And again, now I'm not even going to argue it. People used to say things like, "Oh, well, then you must want Trump." And I'm at the point now where when someone would say that to me, I'll be like, "All right, yeah, I guess so." Now what? Now how are we going to engage in a conversation?
Annie Fitzgerald, thank you for coming on and hope your campaign is going well. We're always glad to have people here that do this. And again,
love the letter hack.
And here's the thing. And here's, again, I don't care. I know what you look like. I don't care if you're half Haitian. That doesn't mean anything. Here's the bottom line. Is everyone who disagrees trolling? No, but
of course not. We have metal.
Somebody decides that this is the first time that they are going to make an appearance in the chat on our show, and it happens.
But why are you giving this even recognition?
But what I'm pointing out here is very substantive, which is if you want to know what trolls actually are, this is what a troll is. A troll is somebody who never follows the channel, doesn't know what we talk about, doesn't care what we talk about, but knows that the Green Party VP candidate was on our show tonight
and came
into the chat only to say, fuck you all for voting for Green.
And that's great because it only helps our numbers. I don't care, but why give that a presence?
That's
the
it.
Kind of stuff.
And you know what? And from now on, you could comment all you want. You could bitch all you want.
No, I don't think trolls disagree.
Thank you for commenting. But for everybody else, understand, whoever you want to vote for,
Absolutely.
You want to vote for Trump? You want to vote for Harris? Go right ahead. And if you want to vote for Jill Stein, that should be supported as well.
Everything, yes.
There's a lot of people who actually want to blame you for supporting something outside of the status quo, which is what people have been programmed to believe is the only acceptable discourse in this country.
It's sort of like, okay. It's so gross. We have a giant palmetto bag. For anybody who does not know Florida,
I got to smash him.
You need to put a sack. He's under us. I'm gonna freaking die. Okay, so for people that don't know, in Florida, not only do we have huge roaches, like if you've never been to Florida, but our roaches are huge and they fly. They fly, not a selling point.
And they come up through the.
Oh my god!
They come
I
up
did this
through
one
the.
time. One was in my car, and I had to pull my feet up, so I couldn't put my foot on the brake. And Jason's like, "You've got to keep driving down there." Oh, it's so gross.
From your lips to God's ears.
You know what? Honestly, things have shifted. in a very significant way
Oh,
in the past year. On the one hand, the Palestinians are losing because they're being completely annihilated. But on the theoretical, philosophical hand, Palestine is winning. And the narrative and politically speaking, and in the world, Palestine is winning.
Well, I will say this, y'all, though. I do believe that a lot of people,
yourself.
you know, for so many people that decided to move here during the pandemic, he ran all the way to the, he ran.
You
ran
guys,
to
I
the
like
other.
have my feet. I'm like sitting Indian style right now on my chair. I can't even put my feet down. I want to retch. That's so gross. No,
Anyway.
Don't come to Florida. And the iguanas and it's seriously every day here. If I took like a selfie with me and where I went, like normal places, and put it to the theme song of Jurassic Park, you would not even, it would flow right fine. On a daily basis, the size of like the iguanas and the stuff that we see here could be like, you could saddle some of these things. It's disgusting. But want to talk about climate or we want to talk about plastics?
So here's what's happening in our water and our food. And this is because there is no regulation when it comes to corporate special interests, particularly as it relates to big oil, because that's where plastic comes from.
Lexi.
Oh, wow. That's all plastic pellets in there. Plastic pellet, plastic pellet, plastic pellet. Microplastics have shown up in the blood, brains, and testicles of nearly every human tested.
Microplastics
Microplastics are everywhere.
They've been found in almost every organ in the body.
We're eating and drinking more plastic than we might have realized.
And you might be likely to blame your own personal behavior for this junk ending up in your body.
Swap out that plastic cutting board.
Plastic is being leached into my coffee.
But it's not all from your cutting board or water bottle.
Plants like this one are producing a form of microplastics that are relatively unknown and nearly completely unregulated.
The problem is once they get outside the fence line, they get into the waterway, things can eat them because they look like fish eggs. They absorb the harmful chemicals like PCBs and PAHs, and those are the things that make them hazardous once they're in the environment. Lots of plastic.
The bottles are made using a chemical called acrylonitrile, which studies at the time.
Okay, can we first say that if, you know, it's kind of like reading the label. One of the mistakes that we have made for many, many years that I think is starting to change now is we are starting to read the labels on our food and drink products. And what you'll notice, I mean, I haven't drank soda in decades, but if there's one thing I think we can all agree.
It cleans rust.
That's what's amazing. Have you seen have you seen the power, no joke, of what Coca-Cola is capable of doing?
Well, does anybody question why things are given names like that? Do you wonder why things are given names like that?
I mean, we know they used to put cocaine in it.
But like, let's say people are reading the ingredients and you're reading your ingredients. Nobody knows what that is. People read the list and they don't recognize like at least 50% of the words. So what difference does it make if you don't know what any of these things are? And I have no idea what that is, but I know I don't want it in my food.
Correct.
So, but I don't want anything in my food other than what is the food.
One of the best things that we did when Jen ran for Congress was we built 2 community gardens. And I highly recommend that if you are not currently involved with a community garden, that you look into a community garden, because that is one of the best things that you could do at the local level. Imagine being able to grow your own fruits and vegetables. Imagine not having to worry about what goes in your food. We do have to get back to the days of being able to do a lot of things on our own. And this is a much bigger problem. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of these things are much easier in the red rural parts of the United States, because people actually have to work with their hands. Very often in a lot of the bluescapes, urban and suburban districts of the United States, a lot of people are not into this stuff or don't do this stuff. And they're heavily reliant on the Publixes and the Trader Joe's of the world to be trusting in what is actually going into their products. But what is there to trust?
But apparently somebody recently went through a Whole Foods, and now and the truth, I haven't been really shopped at a Whole Foods since Amazon bought Whole Foods, but apparently now they have tons of modified ingredients in all their products. Whereas one of the whole things about Whole Foods was they didn't have that. So
Kat's 100% correct. You shouldn't be eating anything of its ingredients you don't understand. And the one thing I'm guilty of every once in a while is, yes, I do want I know you hate me for this, but I do like the occasional Cheetos or, Dorito. I know you do with the cheese, the nacho cheese.
No, for me, I don't like, and I don't like any orange food, and I don't like any food that gets anything on my fingers. And then Cheetos and Doritos get your fingers orange, and then it gets on the countertops and it gets on all the stuff. I don't like orange food. My kids, the only time my kids were ever allowed orange foods is if they were at someone else's birthday party that had those things. I would let them indulge, but none of that crap ever came into my house.
All right, Frosty, I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't support Dr. Shiva, but let's just say that we did an interview with him a number of months back. You could find it in our archive. I recommend you go take a look.
Oh, he's a piece of work.
Yeah, he's interesting.
He's a special piece of work.
We'll continue.
Time showed did not leak significant particles into the beverage inside, which is important because acrylonitrile is a carcinogen when consumed.
Only from your Coca-Cola bottler.
Just 2 years after the test run launched, the FDA rescinded approval. The amount of migration of particles from bottle to contents wasn't safe. The bottle was banned.
I like it very much. I have a youngster 5, and I feel safe that he has the Coke in the plastic bottle.
Why do you feel safe?
Because glass is breakable. So we were always taught to be scared of breaking glass. And as somebody who is a very avid cannabis user and a water pipe aficionado, I will say that glass is the best way to go.
Oh, absolutely.
And so for me, I understand like the idea of, also when you have kids that you don't want them to be having glass. I get that. You don't want a kid running around with every parent that I know had plastic cups for their kids when their kids were little. We all did it.
Afimi Wunawan. It's called More Perfect Union. And Sean Morrow has been a guest on our podcast. I highly recommend that.
It isn't, this documentary, I don't know what the name of it is, but if you go to the More Perfect Union channel, they put out stuff like this regularly. It's really good.
Thank you, Teresa. And yes, we appreciate Brianna having on Fidel. He's been on our show multiple times.
He hasn't been on in a long time because
but we could reach out to him. Apparently, he was talking about degrowth with Brianna today.
Okay, so because we basically what happened was we've adopted Steve as our MMT person, and so we don't often have other MMT people on, but we should. We haven't had him on in a long time.
We could do that. All right, keep going.
The FDA approved the safety of acrylonitrile bottles using testing data from Monsanto, who made the bottles.
You keep stopping
The FDA did no testing of their own during the approval process.
So when we talk about the difference between the two major political parties, there are differences, but they're on the margins. And yes, those margins in a number of instances matter. The Democratic Party generally is better on public education than the Republicans are. The Democratic Party is generally better on abortion than Republicans are. But when it comes to the foundational issues in our country, the idea that the approval of the Food and Drug Administration, which may be the most corrupt organization in all of government at this point.
It's just they're
approved by Monsanto. Monsanto, which is probably responsible for tens of millions of people being poisoned to death. That's it. I mean, come on now.
What?
This is the issue.
Well,
and they are in bed with both major parties.
Consumers were basically victimized by the concept of, because you're given a product and you're told, okay, this is lightweight, it's not breakable, like your kids can carry it around. It's just you don't have to worry about broken glass. And so consumers just expect that products have been deemed safe. And that especially back when we came out with plastic bottles. But once we know better, and yet they continue to do it, that's when it becomes really nefarious. But interestingly, when you go back and look at all of these things, the people who did them, they knew all along. It's only the regular people that didn't know all along. The people on top knew that this was bad all the way along. We didn't. I didn't know that.
No, but sometimes your body just, the other thing that a lot of people don't do which I've always found very interesting. There was a time where I can remember that I ate a certain type of what ultimately was processed cheese, and it affected my ability to go to the bathroom.
That's gross.
Could
Processed
you
cheese.
imagine continuing to do, because I've heard of many people, and listen, South Park has done a great job of lampooning issues like that,
Oh,
where
good grief.
you know you're ingesting something that isn't good for you and your body is telling you to stop doing it, and
Well,
you keep doing it anyway.
Okay, now as somebody, I would argue that is dairy in general.
Oh,
we're
sure.
not supposed to be eating dairy, and I
Well,
know that
1/3
I
of the
do eat
planet
cheese,
is
but
1/3
it's
of the
not
planet is
ideal.
lactose intolerant, and that doesn't necessarily stop a lot of
See,
people
I don't
either.
think they are. I don't think that's what it is. I think that we call it that, but what it really is it's just not something we're supposed to be eating.
Fair enough.
Obviously, bottles don't use acrylonitrile plastic anymore, but the Coke Monsanto story shows how the chemical industry manipulates facts and regulators to push things that we don't fully understand yet out into the world as quickly as possible. From 1950 to today, plastic production went from 2 million tons a year to 450 million tons. Along the way, we see something familiar pop up. In a 1965 congressional hearing, a mention of the waterway between Connecticut and Massachusetts, about where the Monsanto plastic plant was. Strange plastic pellets emerging in the water. Big spills do happen, like all the time. But the persistent problem isn't some big accident that would make the news, but just putting these things out as regular standard operating procedure, part of their daily routine. Chase's Nerdle Patrol puts out a map that shows where citizen researchers are finding this stuff, and it really illuminates how it's happening.
Yeah, so what we have found over the years of collecting this data is there's a close correlation with where plastic is manufactured to where the higher concentrations are.
You also see higher concentrations around train tracks. Nerdles are transported by train, and they just fall off along the route. Congress may finally be doing something. The Plastic Pellet-Free Waters Act was introduced to Congress in early 2024 to address the lack of EPA and state regulation on nurdles. But the plastic industry's been pushing back hard, citing the Do Nothing Clean Sweep program as evidence the regulatory changes are unnecessary. And it's important to remember it didn't have to be this way. This is all about profit. Keeping these particles out of our waterways would cost these companies more money. Pumping out more and more plastic products is profitable. But is any of that savings getting passed on to you, or only the chemicals that are poisoning you? Even back to the Coke bottle. They pushed the bottle out quickly to test the environmental and health effects on real people.
I mean, they know. I mean, it is. It's we're guinea pigs for that. Also, interestingly, something that I know from when I was growing up, definitely there are parts of this country, and this is sort of like that ecocide, environmental injustice. Places like Flint, places like East Palestine, but there are places where there are such large concentrations of cancer, like these cancer cluster places, and they are very often in conjunction with things like this. So, for example, the tract of land between New Orleans and Baton Rouge at one point had like the highest per capita cancer rate in the country. And I don't think it's a coincidence that this is basically where the Mississippi River ends. So it is collecting all of the crap from all the way up and bringing it all the way. And those are the places where people get the sickest, where you have the most of that toxic crap in your water.
There's a lot of things that we can do to deal with this problem. There's a lot of
Banning
things that
plastic
we
straws
can.
is not the answer.
That's not the answer. You know, and to me, it also speaks to this issue. When you think about what we just went through, and thankfully, you know, Hurricane Milton was not as devastating. It was still horrific.
Not
It was
for
really
us.
bad.
Not for us.
We say this all the time because of what we've done to the environment, and big oil being the most guilty party. We're now at a point where we're playing Russian roulette with Mother Nature every year. There is no way to avoid this now. It's been set in motion. And one of the biggest problems that people in the chat and just people in general can't accept is that once you become an arm of the Democratic Party establishment, which is bought and paid for by corporate special interests, you will eventually succumb to the will of big oil, which is what the party has, and they've done for a long time. One thing we didn't get into with Professor Ware, and I would use this as a talking point if I'm on the trail, is to just talk about how neoliberalism led by Reagan and Clinton has brought our country to the point that it's at now.
That's what people, well, I think that it's very under discussed that neoliberalism is a very bipartisan situation.
Yeah.
There's the difference between a neolib and a neocon has yet to be properly explained to me. I don't see the difference.
I would say that the difference between a neolib and a neocon
is one is pro-choice.
Yeah, maybe.
What is the difference? They're both pro-war. They're both horrible on foreign policy. They're both pro-capitalism, pro-censorship. Like, I don't understand. Like, all these labels mean nothing to me.
No, but this is also why we can have, and for anybody who's new to the conversation this evening, go check out the conversation we had on Monday night with the chair of the Libertarian Party and the chair of the director of the Ron Paul Institute. And you will see that even though we do have differences, there's still a lot of crossover. There's still a lot of common ground. There's a lot of things that we agree on. But once the corporate special interests get involved, it doesn't matter if you support certain policies.
No.
And most of the policies that people are pointing out in the chat that they say the Democrats are better on, just remember, most of the time, those things are not whether or not you can put food on the table. And that's what will always define.
No, they're always going to be issues that are much more sexy for fundraising and that where they can really villainize the GOP. I don't know. People want to feel like they're voting. You don't want people to be calling out Kamala voters for being complicit for a genocide, but they are. I don't know how to see it any other way, but they are. Now, do I blame them for the genocide? No. But I do think that in history and for themselves and in their own, they're going to have to reconcile that with themselves. But I think everybody that has been around as an adult in this past year has to come to terms with where they've been this past year and will have to come to terms with that.
And so, Sophia, an interesting point is that the people that you just mentioned is that whether it's Kissinger, Bush, Cheney, these are all people supporting the Democratic Party now.
Well, right. No, I understand what she's saying. Yes, no, neoliberal is an economic theory. I get that. But when we're talking about the people that fall into the neolib category, and I look at them and I think, okay, the Clintons, but she's a huge neocon in terms of war hawkery.
Yeah.
So I wasn't talking about the difference between the theory of neoliberals and neocons. I'm talking more about the crossover of who they are. It's the same people. They stand for the same things politically is what I'm saying. So your neoliberal economic people are the same overlap with your neocons on foreign policy. That's, I guess, my point.
That's why we love you, Mario. It's like, guys, just vote how you want.
And you know what? And it's chromium. And that's what I said. I am too. I am definitely voting for them. And I'm not in a swing state, but even if I were, I would. I'm sick of this nonsense. I'm ready to burn this shit down. So I don't, honestly, I bring it. That's how I feel too.
You can't go through the things that we've seen and have experienced and not recognize that this is a system that will not hold.
No.
It won't hold. Can't. You can't pull the wool. As I've mentioned many a times, I am in the ultimate capitalist profession. I'm in commercial real estate. And even people in my industry, yes, don't get me wrong, there are people who still want to pretend that things aren't that bad, or there are people who are also have the attitude of, fuck them all, I'm going to get what I want.
Well, and that's what the entire real estate market to me in South Florida feels like. It's just a game of hot potato. Who's going to be left holding an uninsurable property that nobody wants because it's underwater? That's the whole game.
Anything that is, especially on the Atlantic coast, on the Gulf, it's not as bad, but it's still bad.
I would beg to differ after this past couple of weeks.
However,
everything south of Lake Okeechobee.
Anything south of Lake Okeechobee, especially in Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade County, where almost half the state's population resides, it will not be habitable down here.
I really think that we need to be having an evacuation plan, like a long-term evacuation plan. And that needs to include stop building things and letting people move here. And this is why I actually don't care about the insurance companies having, Now, for people that are already here and already have their properties, those people need to be protected from any sort of predatory price raising, because this is just where we are.
Donald,
but going forward, I just want to say, going forward, whatever impediments, whatever, carrots, whatever we can do to incentivize people leaving here and not moving here is what we need to be doing. And so if insurance companies want to stop insuring new builds, I am all for that.
Well, that's a huge part of the problem. And the one thing that I think a lot of you guys should understand, and here's a little lesson that I would teach anybody in the chat who's concerned about Trump versus Harris. Here's the deal at the local level, especially the county level, where we are county strong here in the state of Florida. Palm Beach County.
Pete, you hit your mute button.
Oh.
There, you're good.
Am I good?
Yes.
Okay. So one thing that I do want to teach you guys about how you have a misconception about the difference between the reds and the blues. One of the big problems that we have, particularly with the blue counties, is overdevelopment. That's where it happens. It doesn't happen in red counties. It happens in some, but not really.
Which red places have such overdevelopment?
So now you can say that Miami-Dade County is an exception because it has swung red for the most part, but it still has a Democratic mayor of the entire county. And my point is, they don't stop building. Ever. You can never go to downtown Miami and not see at least a dozen extension cranes a football field's length in the air at all times. There's always something going on.
In evacuation zones.
In a city that is considered ground zero outside of New Orleans as the most likely city to go underwater in the next generation. And so the whole concept here is, why stop? Let's just keep doing it. And this is one of the things about being a real estate developer. You are never the one holding the bag. It's somebody else who.
Well, that's what's so upsetting. And there's a lot of people, like, when we go back and look at what happened in Surfside with the building collapse a couple of years ago, there are a lot of people, older people, that are living on fixed incomes, that are living in those old oceanside places that are going to crumble. And those people are going to end up not having any value in their property. But instead of acknowledging this and trying to help those people and whatever, they're just building different buildings that are still going to have the same issues. It's just so, it's capitalism.
I've got news
for you guys. Down here.
And you're going to find this very hard to believe, but if you really sit around and think about it, you'll recognize that the most beautiful places in this country by far are in red areas.
It's true.
Yellowstone National Park. Even though it is on stolen land, Mount Rushmore. Joshua Tree National Park.
It's called Six Grandfathers.
Six Grandfathers. My point is, the prettiest places, the most awe-inspiring places, especially in the Great Plains, especially out west, what do these places all have in common? They're places that have low populations because we haven't destroyed them yet. So when you think about how bad things are in the state of Florida, we are not only, for all intents and purposes, the most overpopulated state. We are a concentrated populated state. There is a significant amount of land in this state that's uninhabitable or it's protected for one reason or another.
And they're trying to screw that up too, because now they're trying to build that highway to nowhere all through some of the last bits of protected land for the Panthers. And I don't mean the hockey team.
No. But that's also one of the common problems that we face as Floridians. We are living in a state, whether it's red or blue, that would be dealing with that same problem. And yet, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to get better. It just seems to get worse.
We need to be having long-term evacuation plan. And this is something, as I always talk about, this idea of a general strike in 28. I think in this same sort of time, people need to be moving to places that are not in flood zones and in flood prone areas. And we need to be moving people to higher ground.
David, think about how beautiful the Finger Lakes are. I was on Lake Seneca within the last year.
My son went to Ithaca. It's really pretty there.
There's not a lot of people up there.
No.
And it's one of the reasons why the environment is able to maintain itself. Why, when you go out into the upper regions of New York State, when you step out of the car and you breathe in the air, you can feel your lungs because it's clean. the cleanest water system in the United States is the New York Aqueduct. I remember the first time I was at a friend's apartment in New York City and they literally drank the water directly out of the tap. And I'm thinking, is that safe? And you're like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, but now I wouldn't, because just who knows how the infrastructure and the pipes and everything. It's like we're having a serious dilemma.
We are.
And they just keep building more and more. So yes, I think people should not be relocating to South Florida. I don't think they should be building. I think there should be a moratorium on people moving here. And I think that people who do live here should be planning over the next few years to move to higher ground. Because I am telling you people this, that if a Cat 5 hit us right off of here, off of Fort Lauderdale, we're done. We're done. And it won't come back because there won't be anywhere to build back.
And Bella, I can't say I'm surprised. It wouldn't surprise me in the least. Which is why when we think about, once again, these very particular issues, the core issues of our time.
And New York is a blue state, I would argue.
Well, New York City's a blue city, but
New York is
State
a blue
is a red state. But that's
New York always goes blue. The state's a blue state.
For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty channel. That is how we're able to continue to spread the word.
If you haven't hit the like button, please do. Please subscribe.
It really does make a difference.
Oh, your son, Jimmy Zimzan, your son's a second year at Ithaca. That's cool. Yeah, my boy graduated last year. But I very much like the area up there. It's very pretty.
Well, I am always cautiously optimistic that we can make things better. And yes, unfortunately, that is what Fort Lauderdale is.
It's gross.
We really do not care enough to make the changes that we want to make, because all too often the reason we don't is because we are a selfish culture, and the only time we care is when it actually affects us directly. But this is the whole point about getting outside of the mindset of the two-party duopoly.
I want us people not just to move to higher ground, but how we build, how we cohabitate on this earth has to be changed. Like the fact that we think that concrete and steel and all of this stuff is somehow going to be impenetrable to Mother Nature is just like the hubris of us is really high. But the way we construct and organize our civilization, if it doesn't like start degrowing and downsizing and becoming more in sync with like living with the earth, yeah, we're going to be gone.
Peace, Dove, you're right. Unfortunately, people love their RVs.
Look, I love my camper, but it's not in Florida. I don't keep it
Well,
here.
yours is an attached camper.
It doesn't matter. People do that, but there are a lot of mobile homes here as well. And I've said for many years that we should not allow mobile homes here. Anywhere that is in a hurricane zone should not allow mobile homes. But then you get into this whole argument in terms of not having various forms of housing. And mobile homes right now are sort of like this last bastion of quote unquote affordable housing for a lot of people. Although now all the parks are being bought out by the big companies so that those are not going to be affordable anyway.
No. And then again, you also have to remember that a trailer's a trailer, and obviously you have to haul it, and that's going to require a certain amount of, gas guzzling on its own right. But when you talk about what a motorhome represents, it's almost like having a yacht. It's just bad. There's a lot of luxuries that people want to have, but that doesn't mean you should have.
I love my camper, but I want to go live in my camper.
There is nothing more pollutive
Why are you
on
mocking
an
my
individual
camper?
basis than somebody who owns a private jet. There is no reason for that. And frankly, a lot of people get caught up in this idea of living a lifestyle. That's also one of the biggest detriments to our technological age that we're living in. People who constantly are on Instagram or TikTok and always admiring other people's lives and success, and they always feel that they have to show that they've got a jet and that I'm in LA, but today I'm going to be in Tahiti, or I'm going to be in Hawaii, and I'm going to pillage the environment every time I go up in that jet.
But they have a Tesla and they have a Cybertruck, so they're contributing very happily.
You know what? As trite as it is, and as much as we have our issues with Bernie, the one thing I've always appreciated about him, Bernie always flies coach on commercial airlines. And as simple as that may seem, because Bernie really is a public servant, that's not how it is. A lot of them are really like Joe Manchin. They have their Maseratis, they have their yachts,
It's gross.
and they have their private jets.
So gross.
That's why, unfortunately, a lot of them are like our representative, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She's on a certain level of suck that most people can't get to. However, we have a broken system. So this idea that, oh, we have to keep voting to prevent what, no, it's
done.
It's over.
You have to accept that. We need to soon. That's what I mean. Like, you have to rip it off. But I mean, instead of building concrete high rises left and right, imagine if we were focusing on building, like, you know, food forests with tiny home communities. And what I would like is like earthen homes that are sort of built in the ground. And that is not something that can actually be done in Florida, which is one reason not to be here. But there are ways for us to better build and cohabitate than what we're doing. What we're doing serves capital. So to say that we're somehow going to be able to survive whatever next category 6 that Mother Nature throws at us, because that's how this is going. And we're not going to be able to outsmart it, and we're not going to be able to outbuild it. And I find it's just entertaining to watch people stewing about this. But, you know,
this has been a great chat this evening. You guys have all been great. And we're going to leave on this note. Again, I'm going to show 2 things. This is the essence of what I was talking about earlier regarding what Mehdi Hasan had mentioned in his chat. Fresh off from attacking Noura Erakat. And remember,
I want to talk to her. I've read her book.
Nora's a professor at
yes, Rutgers. I know, and I'd love to talk to her because I read her book like last year.
Jill Stein and Butch Ware are now attacking me as a rat, house, and FBI agent, no less. What a great way to help the Palestinians and stop the genocide. The Greens truly leading the way for the left and for the Muslims.
Oh, Mehdi.
Well, Mehdi, as I've mentioned before, while he does have the right take on Israel-Palestine, he doesn't have the right strategy, because his bread is buttered by very similar people who fund the Democratic Party.
I don't know how you can say, like, how do you get to simultaneously be right on the Palestine issue, but supporting Kamala Harris? That's like Jews for Jesus.
It doesn't make any sense, but let's not forget, and we've been saying this for a long time, the more that the Democratic Party allows itself to self-destruct is the more that this type of thing is going to occur. Now, listen, no one has a crystal ball. It's still possible that Kamala Harris is the next president, but it's not going to change the inevitable of where things are going. The scariest part about the Democratic Party winning again is that censorship is going to be ratcheted up to 1,000. That's where it's headed.
Because and so many of the people go back to sleep, so they're not even paying attention. Nobody's fighting on these issues.
Correct. That's a huge part of
it. And I really think they're going to get the same result that they got in 2016. They are. They're going to get the exact same result, and they deserve that.
Colin, are you able to scroll down on this tweet? Because I want to show Jill Stein's response.
You know what doesn't help Muslims? Genociding their people. That doesn't help them. And not that all Muslims are Palestinian or all Palestinians are Muslim, because that's not true. But they seem to have gathered in solidarity with the Palestinians at this point. So to think that somehow they can be benefited by supporting the party that's genociding the people that they're standing in solidarity with, that seems really stupid.
Dr. Stein responds with, "This is a lie, Mehdi. I never attacked Noura Erakat, and I never called you a rat or anything else. We all know you want everyone to vote blue no matter genocide, and that is actually a very good tagline.
It is.
But you can make that case without spreading misinformation." Again, another good use of a word.
And she didn't attack Noura Erakat, and I can tell you exactly what happened. Jill Stein actually approached Noura Erakat and asked her to be her running mate, and was sort of looking into that. And Noura said to her that they should try this strategy of approaching. She wanted to sort of give Kamala an opportunity to change her stance before accepting that. And I don't necessarily agree with that strategy, but that's not attacking somebody by simply saying what they wanted to do. All Jill Stein did was explain what the conversation was with Noura regarding her strategy in approaching Kamala Harris. That's not attacking her. And Mehdi knows that.
And one of the things that people fail to understand, and this is very important, because I know people are mentioning this in the chat, and I'll even highlight what Donald James says, which is Mehdi quit MSNBC, is now doing his own thing. Doesn't that show principle?
Yes, to some extent.
It does. But here's a little secret that, and I'm not going to say who the person is, but let's just say that one of Jen's Max Donors, when she ran against Wasserman Schultz, is one of Mehdi Hasan's biggest benefactors. And who's to say that that person is not adjacent to the Democratic Party establishment? And once you get to that level of money, when we're talking somebody who could write $1 million check and say, here's your new media company, that is who you answer to. Now, Mehdi personally probably doesn't care very much for Kamala Harris.
No, but it doesn't matter.
But career-wise, he chooses to, because your career is what gets dangled over your head. This is why we have been lauding Tim Black for the longest time.
And I get that. I get that what Mehdi is like. I get that. But then don't be disingenuous. You don't get to say that you're taking the high road on the issue of genocide, but then turn around and simp for the Democratic Party. Again, those are mutually exclusive things. You don't get to do that. You don't get to support Kamala Harris and then pretend that you're not taking a stand on what's happening in Palestine. And you will be taking a stand. That is taking a stand on what's happening in Palestine. And that's the vote. That's what you're saying with that vote. Now, you might not like that that's what we see, but it doesn't change what it is.
No, it's not going to change what it is.
You're making your statement. That is your statement on your thoughts about what you're okay with.
But this is also one of the big problems that I am trying to get people to understand and to see, which is the hardest reality in all of politics is for people who they think are on their side or are fighting for their cause. When the money is on the table and they have to make a decision, they will pick the money every time. There is very few, if any, people who will walk away from it and just say, fuck it. Very few, if any, people are Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle is the one person in any level of entertainment where serious money was on the table and he walked away from it. But most people will not do it. And in the case of politics, there's also, sometimes it's not even a lot of money. Some people.
No, it's amazing how cheap. It's amazing how so many of these corporate whores can be bought for. It's unbelievable how cheap they are.
One of the things that we definitely know about Wasserman Schultz is that she loves to go on CNN. She loves walking in the Capitol Rotunda on the 3rd floor where the media is set up so that she can get in front of the camera and let everybody know exactly what's going on in my neck of the woods.
Well, she gets money from AIPAC for doing so. You know what I mean? Like she gets paid to put their talking points out there as often as possible. And she loves to, is the first Jewish representative from Florida and so on and so forth. And she loves that. She loves to play her, as if she's somehow representative of the Jewish community. She disgusts me for that extra.
The thing that we have been trying to point out on this podcast for a while now is that this isn't about the left. This is about economic populism to save our republic, which is why we get along very well with the libertarians, even though we have strong disagreements with them.
That's his point. The left is all stuck in their moral high horse.
Yes, which is why we're trying to change that narrative here. Because what else you got?
Yeah, I'd say, and it's interesting what they hold out. So these people will sit there and act so sanctimonious about, you've got to protect a woman's right to choose. And so you've got to vote for Kamala. So it's okay to say you support a woman's right to choose as long as they're not Palestinian women.
How about the fact
that I'm not going to accept getting my rights, feeling my rights are safe, but I have to throw another people under the bus.
And this is also one of the reasons why we break through that two-party duopoly very effectively here in the state of Florida. You see, Floridians are always accused of being dumb and not really sharp in what's going on.
Have you seen a lot of videos?
I've seen plenty of Florida.
It's like let me tell you,
that.
When there is crazy ass shit, it's Florida be Floriding.
And yet, Florida still passed a $15 minimum wage while easily reelecting Trump in 20. Or voting for Trump in the Electoral College.
Yes.
And then this year, while we all know, despite what the Democratic establishment who wants that sweet corporate cash is saying right now, Donald Trump is going to win the state of Florida. However, we have two key ballot initiatives that we have
a few ballot initiatives. Those are just the two that we tend to kind of focus on.
Yes, there's one other one that we should be voting no on. I believe that's Amendment 5, if I'm not mistaken.
Amendment 1 is also squirrely.
Yeah. But Amendment 3 is cannabis legalization with home grow, and Amendment 4 is women's reproductive freedom. Now, unfortunately, in the state of Florida, you need a 60% majority.
You just need to call it recreational cannabis bill.
Okay, recreational cannabis bill.
We need recreational cannabis.
And women's right to choose.
And women's right for abortion.
And women's right for abortion.
Yeah.
And again, if you're pro-life, that's great. I have nothing against people who are pro-life. Stay the fuck out of my business. Either you believe in the separation of church and state, which is part of the Constitution, the most important document ever created in the history of mankind. Maybe.
Well, the other issue with the people that I tend to focus on with the anti-choice people is that they'll all swear up and down that they support the concept of democracy. So then you just have to explain to them, well, you're in the minority. And so on this particular issue, we're going to go with the majority. And while I do understand that sometimes people say that democracy is not necessarily the be all end all, because the truth is that it does hurt minorities. But that's why we have something called the Constitution, so that there are certain things that are that are enshrined in a way that it isn't just a vote that can undo it.
And we appreciate you being here, Josh, and glad that you enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah.
He is awesome.
He's great. He's actually a movement leader. Like, he's somebody,
serious.
if I were him, I would be watching my back.
But he's also, but when you're in that position, you have to have that bring it on mentality, because you're not going to not do what you're going to do. That's what I had people say to me. Are you worried? Are you worried about speaking out against AIPAC and talking out against Zionists? And, you know, because I get threatening stuff. I got the nice rotten hell letter. You know, I get stuff like that. But you got to do what you got to do. You're not going to not do what you like, especially somebody who is like a professor of the Black radical tradition. I would expect nothing different.
And this is also when we talk about the issue of the separation of church and state. You know, this is one thing about the Muslim community that I have all the respect in the world for. They have their laws and their teachings and their beliefs, but you know what they never do? They never impose their will. There was never a crusade about preaching Muslim religion to the masses and saying, you better join, otherwise we're going to kill you. You know, kind of like Queen Isabella was doing when she was promoting Christianity to the new world, what became the United States of America. We have a very dark history that we don't want to talk about, or that we want to pretend is not really an issue, but it is an issue. I have often maintained that the biggest reason why Muslims get the short end of the stick in this country, and one other thing that we have mentioned before and we'll mention again, the Muslims are an exceptionally driven and successful culture.
Oh, yeah. Let me be clear, especially Palestinians. Palestinians in the diaspora, like the level of overachievement is extremely disproportionate. Extremely disproportionate. Like for the amount of the population that they are, their positions are extraordinary. I seriously, it is not unusual. It is, first of all, Palestinians also have lots of kids. Okay. That is one thing that they did, but it is not unusual for you to meet a family where every single one of their kids is a doctor. They're either doctors, they're engineers. It's always something that is extremely like academically inclined and very, they're extremely overachievers.
I think this will show you. And guys, if you haven't liked and subscribed, please do. Gerwalk, thank you for hitting that statement in the chat all night long.
Can I just say this? Because now it's really upsetting me because, and this is a key thing about what's going on in Gaza, is the scholasticide. Because they know how dangerous Palestinians are in terms of their minds and their motivation and what they're capable of achieving. That is why they target teachers, professors, doctors.
They're blowing up schools. They're blowing up hospitals.
The reason that they are targeting their best and brightest and leaving children orphaned and dismembered is very, very intentional in that regard. They are killing off the ideals. They're trying to kill off their spirit by killing off their educators. It's not working, by the way. But that is a big part of it. They're killing their universities.
I think if we can live in the moment right now to at least end on a positive note, it's this. We have shown earlier this year the image of the very, very Ashkenazi blonde woman that showed up in Manhattan.
Oh, freaking out at them.
Freaking out at the Hasidics who were standing with the Palestinians. Lost her mind. and saying that they're not real Jews, that they don't actually, no, actually, they are the real ones.
They are the real Jews.
And they are the real ones because they recognize that it's Palestine, not Israel.
You know, it would really freak her out when I told her, you know who the real Hebrews are? You know who the real Hebrews are? They're Palestinians.
This image
So crazy.
that was taken earlier today, or excuse me, over on October 7th, just a few days ago. That's why we weren't able to play it on Monday. But on the 1-year anniversary, where this country, and of course it was never talked about in the media, and why the hell would it be, that the overwhelming majority of people who marched on October 7th were for free Palestine,
Of
not
course.
for Israel.
Of course.
But this is symbolic of exactly where one movement is going and where the other movement is going.
I can see why they're so scared for their safety.
This is so symbolic. And while I think that clearly she's doing it for attention, and she clearly would like for somebody to hit her, you know, kind of like the person who was
I
doing
want to
this.
hit her.
Well, somebody, but somebody did claim to get hit, because what ended up happening was that they stood too close to where people were waving their flags, and one of the flags hit them in the face. And they got hit in the eye. Oh, got hit in the eye.
And yes, Steve, Jesus was a Palestinian Jew. He was a Palestinian Jew.
Did you know Jesus was a Jew?
I did you know he was Palestinian?
Yes. He was also dark.
He was dark.
Yeah. Hard to sell that one. But they've been
You don't
selling
think
it
he
hard
was
for a long
like white
time.
with blue eyes in
Oh,
the
come
desert?
on. There are people who really still believe that. Like, they really do. They're like, well, you know, he really came from such and such. And in that region, they had such and such. And he were... Imagine even arguing that. Who cares what Jesus looks like?
He
I thought
was
this
something
about the-
between African, Egyptian, Arabic, something like that. That would be my guess.
And this is what I've always found interesting, is that, let's just say for the sake of argument that he is
Not white.
Let's say whether he's the son of God or a divine prophet or even the Messiah, let's say he even existed and that's true. Does it matter what he looks like?
Well, here's the thing, and here's what the ultimate thing is. Let's say they say something like, well, if he's the son of God, then he's in God's image. Right. Black.
Whoops.
How about that?
Yeah.
See, that's the thing that would freak them out. So like, and to me, I'm an atheist. So to me, it's all equally as,
hogwash.
Kind of. And I don't want to be disrespectful, but yeah, to me, it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other. What color you think Jesus is, or what color God is. But it's just interesting how people have like so distorted this concept that there's like white, blue-eyed people in the desert in the Sinai area in what was Canaan. I don't think so.
I also like, but see, I know my brother's watching this, and I know he is seeing this. See, my brother's a Zionist, like my mother is, and
So
I kind of like to rub it in.
It's
their
so
face.
unfortunate.
It's kind of fun.
But you know what? This is exactly the kind of stuff people should see, because the amount of misinformation that was getting out about the protests and the demonstrations, that they were violent and that Jewish people feel threatened and violent. No, they don't. No, they don't. No, they don't. And anybody who says that, they're just some sort of like operative or shill for whatever they're pushing, because that's just not true.
And let's also keep in mind, and this is, again, a very important part of all this. And I've been saying this to Jen for the past few days, and now I'll say it on the podcast. I have so much respect for the Free Palestine movement and how they have conducted themselves over the past year. They have avoided almost every single conceivable roadblock that you can possibly imagine.
And yet still peaceful. And I was at the November 4th last year when it was the first really big rally in
when
DC.
you kind of knew that this was going to be really bad.
Yeah, and I was there, and it was so crowded, and there were so many people and so many different groups and organizations, and I was there for the entire day, all around, walking through the city, tons of people, and I didn't see a single negative, anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish, nothing, not any squabbles, not any fight, nothing. And I've been to many different like protests, and I've never seen that. That's how come I know that they're full of shit. And I have not yet seen firsthand accounts. It's always people telling you, oh, the students felt unsafe. Okay, well, where are those students? And let's hear their stories. And I will not believe it unless I have an opportunity to cross-examine.
And
I want video evidence or the ability to cross-examine a witness. And if you don't give me either of those things, then I'm going to say you're full shit.
And the amazing thing, Garwick, is that the women that do this, they're all the same. They all look the same. They're all from the same places, and they are all of the same level of privilege.
Yes.
And because this upsets them, but as I've often said, imagine what it would be like in the United States, because I know people that were never even a part of 9/11. They just saw it on TV and they're still traumatized by it to this day. Could you imagine living in a place where you literally had death from above dropping down on you every day? I mean, you want to talk about strong-willed people? And that's one of the reasons why Islam is now Christianity is the biggest religion on the planet, but the single biggest denomination of religion, which is Shia Muslim, it's incredible how strong-willed they are and how much their faith gives them strength. I didn't intend for that to rhyme, but it just worked out that way. It is true that this is essentially what we've come to. We are watching the empire die, but we're also watching a level of privilege that is not going to get their way anymore, because eventually we're too awake now. We're too aware of what the societal problems are. There's too many channels like ours. Now, granted, our message doesn't get out there on a level that we
I wish
like
it did, because you still have friggin' Kamala Harris still doubling down on the friggin' rape narrative still. They're still doing that.
Maged, thank you for that correction. I appreciate it. I thought it was Shia, but it is Sunni Muslim. And that is why
Sunni Islam. See, you're messing it all up.
Sunni Islam. Okay, my mistake.
The people are Muslim. The religion is Islam.
But we've had a great crowd tonight. I know a lot of people are going to see this. We appreciate each and every one of you being here. And again, if you are so inclined, make sure that you go to patreon.com/generational change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty channel. Our goal is to continue to transform politics into service. And
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what you mean.
I don't
by
know.
that,
I'm not
David.
sure what you mean. I don't know.
More specific
And
about
it doesn't matter anyway. At my age, I'm pretty comfortable with where I am.
Yes.
I'm pretty good. I know what I have to do in order to live with myself.
We appreciate you, Megad, and we of course appreciate you. See, we have a Jew and a Muslim telling us that they love our channel because we know a thing or two about what we're doing. To Megad, to Steve Grossman, to Schultz, David Hunter, Bella Gracie, Peace Dove, Donald James, Jay, the Millennial Scrap Heap, John Nada, Lewis Gordon.
That's sad. Is that what happened to the Falcon?
Probably. I don't stay up on Star Wars, and neither does Jen. Although I have a good friend that really likes that stuff. Melanie Davis, Henry Kajawa.
I live amongst those people, though.
Mario. Yes,
Chromium.
but no. Michael Penn, thanks for checking in late. Appreciate you being here. Everybody being here counts.
What do we have for Monday?
Ray J, Cup of Joy.
Do you have anything set up for Monday?
As far as Monday is concerned, Afimi 101, I'm just going to say it that way. Josh, thank you for being here. No, I do not have Monday scheduled yet. We are trying to get Max Blumenthal to come on the podcast because we want to, again, we didn't get to it tonight, but it'll still be a story by next week. For those of you who have been paying attention, the Gray Zone's Jeremy Loffredo has been arrested by the IDF. And why was he arrested? He happened to expose the truth about Iran and whether they were targeting civilian areas or if they were targeting military
Because they're
areas.
not.
Because they're not. They're targeting military areas.
They are. That's what's happening. They actually are playing by the rules. It's fascinating.
Israel can't have that.
No.
So and they should be grateful that he should be grateful that he was only arrested because Israel has a habit of murdering journalists, not arresting them.
Oh, yeah, no. And by the way, even American journalists.
Oh, yeah.
They don't care.
He is an American. Well,
bullet right through the friggin'. They'll put a bullet right through your head.
They don't care.
Nope.
They'll just say, "Oh, it's really a shame that this happened."
And then Kamala will say, "Well, Israel has the right to defend itself."
Israel
has the right to defend itself
as long as it's part of her talking point. Mark J, Nelson Ortega.
Oh, you know who I'd love to talk to is Craig Mokibar. Mokibar. I've sent you a stuff. Katie's had him on a couple times.
Could definitely do that. Got to reach
He's a former
Fidel. Fidel is Muslim.
yeah.
It'd be good to have him on to talk about both things.
Yeah, we could definitely have him. We haven't had him on in a
Yeah,
long
we
time.
could definitely have him on 100%.
Yeah.
So we'll make that happen. We are going to have on Norman Solomon. Did you start listening?
Not yet, but I'm going
Okay.
to. Him, this guy.
Okay.
He's
Yeah, no,
awesome.
he's cool. Sisyphean Task. Great to have you back. Yeah, no, we're having our channel's growing a little bit. We're trying. We're getting somewhere. Jesus Morales.
Oh, and
no, we're not bootlickers, Jesus. We're just truth tellers, whether you like it or not.
We've seen Is that a verb?
By the way, if you guys,
Terrible.
because obviously Anna Kasparian has been in the news lately.
Has she?
Yeah,
What's
apparently
going on?
she's leaving the left.
Oh, whatever. I finally am done with like Russell Brand, but it has nothing to do with politics. He apparently like is now all into like religion and stuff. So like that just disinterests me.
And even though you were clearly here to give us grief, Cassandra Lynch,
Let me tell you,
we're
I
happy.
feel like on
we're
Big
still
Bang
happy
Theory
to have
saying,
you. We're still happy to have you here.
Legally not. Legally very sane.
And remember, we didn't block you. We didn't tell you to get lost. We can disagree, but you're welcome to chat. You're welcome to troll.
Insane.
If
anything, I am overeducated and have too much information, and that I could see could cause a lot of mental issues. Let me tell you something. I've seen some shit. I've seen and heard some shit.
Teresa, thank you again for your contribution. And again, plastic bottles underwater don't break down because sunlight doesn't hit them. We just shouldn't have plastic to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah. But here's where it gets complicated. So then you have baby bottles made out of glass, and then you have to wrap them in what? Like you have to constantly it's just, we're people that live for convenience.
Looky Lou, the truth of life. I believe you're new, but maybe not. That looks like you're in Florida. And yes, dirty Florida wash, but still dirty. That is true. John,
no hurricane is going to fix that mess.
Probably not.
No hurricane's going to get rid of that filth. There'll be people who are still selling absent property that's been washed out to sea, and somebody will still be selling it to somebody.
John Nada, Juan, Annie Fitzgerald, Sable Minor. We can tell who our regulars are. We can tell who our noobs are, and we're glad for all the noobs. The noobs are very appreciated. Frosty B Rocks Inside CA. I know you're new, and we're happy to have you here. Yes, we know that Dr. Shiva is a smarty pants.
And he doesn't, and he won't shy away from telling you.
No, he definitely will not.
No, I don't think he's stupid. I just think he's a piece of work. I think that he's a narcissist. I think he's extremely misogynistic.
And I will say this as a guy who, again, I'm very direct about how
he's a total asshole.
You have to see the way that he spoke to me versus the way he spoke to Jen.
Ridiculous. I just
two different ways of talking to people.
I don't care how many degrees he has.
Yeah.
I have 3.
LPA Films. Thank you for checking in.
Yeah.
Let's see.
That don't impress me much.
That don't impress me much.
No.
Our good friend Veridiana Carvalho.
Veridiana.
From
I like
Brazil.
that name. Veridiana.
Good to have you here. Yalda, happy to have you here. And yes, we agree.
I don't see how you can have it. You can't have it both ways. That's what people want. That's what they want. They want to have it both ways. They want to say that, no, I'm one of those decent people. I agree with you, but just strategically, I can't have Trump. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah, you got to make
Jews for Jesus. Take a pick, man. Take a pick.
Amari Mernandina, happy to have you here. I believe you're new. Thank you so much for checking in. Who else? Gerwalk, you've been great. And I don't know if you're new or not.
But if you guys aren't subscribed, please do so.
Avalon 19. Does Kamala support criminal justice and policing reform? Kamala is the police.
Oh my God.
That's
does she support?
Kamala is the police.
Look, just her
Hector,
history.
I believe you're new. Yes, a lot of people are looking at third party now.
Kamala's history in the criminal justice system is beyond shameful.
Mina Lita, can I just say, really love your profile pic. And what's not to love?
Woof.
I mean, come on now. That's what it's all about.
That's a woofosaur.
Well, a woofosaur. Well,
that's what I now call she's the white woofosaurus.
Well, just remember, it is also.
I even sing a song called The Great White Woofosaur.
David Hunter. And remember, one of the things that I have often quote is one of my favorite quotes is by Bill Murray of all people, which is, I I don't trust a person who doesn't like dogs, but I trust any dog that doesn't like a person.
You have to always go with their opinion.
Mm.
Yeah. So if somebody's asking if I'm like going Anarchist Ram, like, am I just going so far from the Dems that I'm going to go to the right? No, I'm left of the Dems.
But you're going to fall over.
Yeah, I'm going far to the left. I'm coming back around the other side.
Zepi.
Yeah, they do.
Zepdisi.
So, you know, I don't, if that means being conservative or going to the, like, I fight for people that can't fight. I fight for the least of these. I believe everybody is entitled to a life of dignity and justice. I'm an abolitionist. I believe in reparations. So I don't see that as somebody going to the right, but I'm definitely not with the Democrats.
Me, myself, and I, great to have you here as always. Again, I don't agree with the red MAGAs completely belonging to Bibi. Now, there are a number that certainly do, but I got to tell you, there's a lot of them that are just not with this war shit. And that is the thing about the America First movement.
Not enough with Israel. They are with other things, but not with Israel, because too many of them are friggin' Zionists, even though they're anti-war.
The ones that are pro-religion, yes. The ones that are evangelical, yes. But there's a lot of libertarian MAGAs. That's what I'm saying. And they're not with
I don't know.
shit.
I feel like too many. I agree. They're all with Bibi, because that entire room of people that weren't seat fillers that were standing up and clapping for him, yes, it was more Republicans than Democrats. They're all doing it.
Beyond T, Andrew Dwyer.
Just like I feel like anybody in Congress who's sitting there and saying that they support a ceasefire, but then they also have supported sending more money to Israel, also full shit. If you have supported legislation that sends money to a genocidal state, you are part of that genocide. You cannot have it both ways.
LDCO, thank you very much for checking in. We appreciate it. We have had quite the chat tonight. And as Jen says, it's nice to have this problem. I have to put you up just because you've got my name twice. Dump the blue.
Pete Peters.
Pete Peters. That's
he's got praying mantis.
Praying mantis, which I think is still an endangered species, but I remember when I was younger.
You know, the female eats the male after they conceive.
See if they do.
Uh-huh.
That's terrible.
Uh-huh.
Which is
she
the
eats him
one
because then there's no use for him anymore.
Which is the one that eats their babies?
A lot of different critters do that, but I'm just saying that the mantis, she eats the male.
That's a male. That's a man eater right there, literally. Did I actually sing a good one? Did I do a good one?
Yeah, it's a man eater.
Of course, Chip, thank you for being here as always. One of our most amazing supporters, and of course, over Jen's shoulder, you can see
Rainbow Bridge crossed.
Carla, love having you here as always.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Oh my God, there's no good guys in the duopoly. That goes without saying. They're the same. There is no winner. It's just, I'm sick and tired of people saying that a vote for anybody but Kamala is a vote for Trump.
Yeah, that's still funny.
Yes, I understand the math.
I believe that your new troll priest Zan's dumb. Vote green. Thank you for being here.
Names. I always am so curious what some of these names mean.
Well, we're getting new peeps. Hopefully they will return.
Yes,
I know one person who won't, but that's
okay. We go live, guys. We do a live stream on Monday and Thursday nights, usually at 9. Sometimes we do go earlier, depending on certain guest schedules. And we drop clips every day. So,
Arif, good to see you as always. Yes,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. If we had 8 more years, hey Willie, we had a good chat the other day. 8 years. The idea of 8 years of Clintonism. You will get somebody so much worse than Trump. He'll just be, we'll bring Trump back like they're bringing back Dick Cheney. Trump will be the good guy after what will come after 8 more years of Clintonism. They'll what do you call it? Rehabilitate Trump, just like they've done with W. He's just a guy you would hang out with. Yeah.
So we hope you guys have enjoyed the conversation this evening. Remember, also check out our clips and make sure that once this live stream is over, that you go on and leave a comment. Because it's going to help more and more people.
We talk about like big issues here. We do long form interviews. Oftentimes it is political, but we do tend to stick with issue based discussion.
And last but certainly not least, JD Party Hat, who has been a regular on our channel, I think since the beginning or just about. Unfortunately, our former friend Andrew north of the border did not like the fact that we would not succumb to the pressure to support the Democratic candidate. and he decided to leave.
Yeah, that's
okay.
unfortunate.
That's his choice.
That's his, yeah.
And he doesn't even live in this country.
But I put out an interesting comment on my own little thing the other day on like the 1 year that this has been going on. And I really do feel this way now. And I did it when it first started happening. I've had people that don't talk to me now because of what's going on in Israel. And I realized that I have not lost any friends in this past year, but a lot of people have lost me as a friend, and that I have no regrets, and free Palestine.
Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. We love you all. We'll see you Monday.
Yeah, where is Metal tonight? He probably had some plans.